All right, we are live. Hello, everyone. I always love the waiting to go live faces we make, where it's like I can see on LinkedIn that it started streaming, but I'm still waiting for buttons to open. So, welcome to our very first live session of Designed for Her. This session is called Not a Pipeline Problem. This is part of a 5-week series that is a collaborative effort between International Association of Women, TalentAlly, and Project More Happy. Our goal is to have conversations that talk about real issues, but also put real solutions in place. Jessica and I have been doing this work for a long, long time, and we see repeated patterns over and over and over. So we thought, let's have conversation. We also have a resource we put together that will be available for download. When we are here live on LinkedIn, the chat is open. So if you have questions, comments, things you want to share, please pop them in the comments at any time. We will be keeping an eye on them. You also can connect with any of us through LinkedIn directly, and we're always happy to continue these conversations. So I'm going to kick us off here. Jess, you and I have been in and around this conversation for years, but for anyone that's just tuning in, what would you say is the simplest way to think about what people infrastructure actually means in the workplace?
Yeah, this is such a great question. I'm so excited to have these conversations because I think they happen behind closed doors a lot, but we don't have them out in the open so that other people can hear and learn from what is actually like we're experiencing in the spaces we're navigating and what other people are. People infrastructure in its like simplest of terms is understanding how people work and then designing the ecosystem, the environment, so that people can show up and work at their best. So it is the systems and the processes and the team dynamics and all of those, and the people, right? All of those things that set us up so that we can work our best. But we have to understand how humans work and how individual people work. So that's the people infrastructure piece.
I love that. Thank you for kicking us off there, because I think we're going to come back to that time and time again, and looking at like how do people actually work, and then how do we plan around that.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and we're
So
gonna oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
yeah, no, I was gonna say, so and this conversation today, right, is about the pipeline. Um, because that's where people enter into our workspaces. And a
Mhm.
lot of times, high turnover, retention, all of these challenges that are becoming more and more regular. We see more and more rounds of layoffs, but we also see a lot of the quiet quitting. We see women leaving the workforce time and time again. And we write these off. I say we, it's the collective we, HR, leadership, we tend to write these off as pipeline problems. The right people just aren't in the pipeline. And what Megan and I want to talk about today is, you know, we are recruiting hard, we are meaning well, we are making really strong offers, and women are still leaving. And to me and to Megan, like, this is not a pipeline problem, right? This is a design problem.
Mhm.
And so, Megan, I guess, um, why do you think we label it as the pipeline problem?
Well, I think that's the comfortable excuse. I think that saying it's pipeline problem is easier than taking a hard look in the mirror and saying this space wasn't built for them. And so when a woman comes into the workplace and the fit is not right, we often point it off to, okay, well, the pipeline was broken. So it was bad sourcing, or we need to start over. And I think it becomes really looking at, and there should be data and metrics in place that can tell you, is it that we tried, she just left, or we can't find them, right? There's a difference between we can't find them and we can't keep them. And
Yeah.
so I think that's a really, really important place to start. Um, just from your perspective, Are there things that companies usually aren't seeing when they're saying, well, we did everything, it's just she wasn't the right fit. She didn't fit here.
Yeah, a lot of what I work with leaders on in this space is, when we go through the interview process, as companies, as workplaces, we are often selling the version of the company that we want to be, that we really want to be. And I think HR especially has this vision of how the business can work and how it can hold its people, and we sell that. And so the pipeline that's coming in gets that narrative. And the missing piece a lot of the time is the question around, here's what success looks like for us. What do you need in order to be successful here? And what do we need from you in order for this to be successful? And those are design solutions around around how we can all best show up. But it requires of us from an HR perspective to understand the difference between who we want to be and what reality women are actually stepping into here. Right. So
Mm-hmm.
there's a big gap between what we sell women and what they experience when they walk through the door. And it can be very well meaning and well intentioned, but that gap exists in every single organization. And if we ignore that gap, we have a real problem.
We do. And, as something, as you were talking, this literally just popped in my head that we both have, I'll say, creative marketing backgrounds, but we also both have evolved into this talent space. So I think we understand the branding perspective of talent acquisition. Brand is very important, and
Mm-hmm.
how you showcase yourself and attract attention and what you're telling people. But just like when we sell a product, if you buy a product and then it's delivered and you're like, this is not what I thought I was buying, right? You return the product possibly,
Right.
or you write a bad review, and it's the same thing. So
Yeah.
like, I totally understand the creative, the we have to get them in, we have to look bright and shiny and make sure they want to come work here. But if it doesn't fit on the back end, it's it's gonna be a disaster. And we
Yeah.
all know, right? We can preach all we want. It is more expensive to hire somebody new than it is to retain somebody like that. That message, I know every HR leader knows that
Yeah.
message, but we still struggle with this fitting the mold on the back end.
Well, and I think a big piece of that too is we hire for a role and we almost take the human out of the role. So we're hiring and saying, you are absolutely perfectly qualified for this role. But this role doesn't take into account whether you're a mother, whether you're a caretaker, whether you are you're the sole carpool person for schools, whether you are you have some needs that require flexibility. Like, that isn't in that role description, and that's where the people infrastructure actually supports you or doesn't once you're in the role.
Mhm, mhm. So we have a portion of what we said we were going to talk about today that looks at the breakdown, looking at the offer letter to the exit interview.
Mm-hmm.
And we kind of broke this down into the arrival gap, the slow fade, the data reality. So when we
Yeah.
talk about the arrival gap, this is the gap we're talking about, right? This is what was promised. This is what I walked into day to day.
Yeah.
You mentioned a few things specifically around working moms, which I think
Yeah.
is always very relevant to women. Are there other things that you hear from women that they you feel like they get sold in that interview
Yeah.
process and then actual culture doesn't back up?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of really common examples right now, and they're well-intentioned examples. But a lot of times, we sell perks. We sell these, we're going to take care of you wellness pieces. We're going to help you feel human in this job. So a really good example is having a wellness program or a gym membership. I love the gym membership sell because companies are really good to say, we care about your health. And I think it's very well-intentioned. And so we're going to pay for your gym membership. But then the backside being, if your process, if your structure, if the environment itself doesn't allow people to step aside and use that membership, what good is it? And this goes with, you have wellness apps. You have mental wellness apps now that we offer employees.
Mhm.
Again, that's all great, but if that's the sell and then there's no time to actually invest in these spaces, there's no time to be a human when you're in the workspace, that is a big gap between expectations and reality.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I have to say, having been on the other side of that gap, it is frustrating to end up in a place where the perks were heavy. It sounded like it was going to be great. And then you walk in the door and the culture is one that, oh yeah, we talk a really good game, but nobody leaves the office before 8 p.m. at night.
Right.
And I mean, that's one of the decisions. Like when I had my first child, I chose not to return to the workplace right away. I chose to take a break, um, because it was going to be really challenging to manage the culture and the schedule, the logistics, but also be a mom and commute and do all the things.
Well, and the thing I experienced a lot when I was in those spaces is, and it very much is a gender thing for a lot of different reasons.
Mhm.
It is harder, I think, for women to step away and take advantage of some of these perks. Whereas I would be there and I would be resentful that
Mhm.
my bosses and the men would get out and go to the gym and no one would think any differently, but the women, for whatever reason, we didn't feel like we could, right? So there is that which is cultural and structural too. So that is part of the people infrastructure that exists that we can change the design for.
Absolutely. And I think some of that with women, right? It's the learned behaviors where sometimes we make up that story ourselves. It's not even that somebody came and said
Right,
women go
right,
to during lunch or whatever, but the way society has pushed this divide between men in the workplace, women in the workplace. And I'm not saying that this is across every organization. If your organization has figured this out, I want to talk to you. I want to know
yeah,
how. Who are the people that are leading that? Because those are the people that I think we need to showcase and model and really say this is how it works.
right.
Now when we talk about this breakdown from offer letter to exit interview, um, my view on this and my experience is that it's not usually just a one big dramatic event. It's a breakdown over time where it's like this slow fade, right? It's you start the new role, you sign up for all the perks, you use all the things, you're trying to onboard, and suddenly something just doesn't feel right. And then you realize, oh, that's not what I signed up for. And you try to push through because maybe it's just me. Maybe, maybe I need to change my patterns. I need to change my ways. Um, do you feel like there's a moment where they realize, oh, this isn't getting better. This isn't, I need to walk away. That like, what is that? What is the final thing that says
Yeah.
this is the place for me?
Yeah. So sadly, I think it takes us quite a while to get there. I mean, it is death by 1,000 design failures, right? It is how we end up burnt out because each of those little failures on its own, we are at our core humans, we are optimists. And so we give the benefit of the doubt. We say, oh, it'll be different next time. Oh, that's just, we justify why things happen. And so it gets to the point where we find ourselves really resentful. We find the resentfulness of the workplace, of what's happening there, affecting our lives dramatically outside of work. And
Mhm.
that is where you hit this burnout space because your alignment is off because of the design failures that come from that cause the decision fatigue that I don't understand where my career path is, like that was never built into the system, or it was promised me one thing but it never materialized. And
Mhm.
so it's the resentment that builds up, and that's why it's the slow fade. um, but there's always this moment, and I've lived it in multiple jobs when I worked in companies elsewhere. Like there is this moment where you go, why am I doing this? Like you just hit that point of burnout where you're like, I physically, emotionally cannot do this anymore. And
Mhm.
that's where we find women a lot more than we find men, right? Um, we find it happening, and I know we're going to talk about that next episode next week too, but um, it becomes this resentful ball that affects the rest of our lives.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, it's that moment when work, I feel like it starts to filter into every point of your life where it's the thing you resent, it's the thing you hate doing, no matter how happy you are. Like it's the Sunday scaries, right?
Right,
It's the
right.
that gut feeling of I don't want to be here.
Yeah,
And sometimes it builds slowly. Sometimes there's one or two big things, but often it's kind of just this slow realization that this wasn't built for me. This wasn't isn't what I thought I signed up for. Um, Jess, you and I are both data people. Like we love seeing the data behind things.
yeah.
And I think looking at there's lots of studies, there's lots of research that comes up around women in the workplace specifically.
Hmm.
And I think looking at what organizations think is happening versus what women report are happening is really important. And you had a great example of this with the gym membership, right? Companies are like, oh, we're investing, we're giving you money to go to the gym. But in reality, the gym is not accessible easily for that employee, which means the employer is ranking it as this is a great benefit. And the employee is like,
Yeah,
I don't see it as a benefit.
right.
What do you think are, or what do you see as retention factors that actually move the needle for women specifically?
Yeah. So a lot of research shows that the reason women specifically are leaving are due to flexibility. Again, we are more often the caretakers for kids or our parents. So we need greater flexibility to come and go. Advancement clarity. We don't know our career paths. We leave because we don't see a future for ourselves doing work with this organization or company, and we leave because we are not learning new skills to be able to grow. So those are really the four big things: caregiving, flexibility, advancement, and skill investment in us. That's why we leave. We're not leaving for more money. We are leaving because if you put all those together, we don't feel valued where we are. Okay. Someone isn't going to feel valued because you give them half days on Fridays in the summer, because that doesn't solve any of those four design challenges around flexibility and advancement and skill investment. Right? We have to design for those to get people to stay, and that's where the disconnect is between what companies are doing and what women actually need.
Mhm. It's the difference between the structure and the perk, right? I
Yes.
look at summer Fridays as a perk.
Hmm.
Structure would say, have a flexible schedule. This is the expectation. Flex
Yeah.
around this. You need to be available for this. But I will tell you, summer Fridays, I dislike, well, dislike is the wrong word. I like them when everyone else is out of the office because that's when I do some of my best work. So don't tell me I can't work. Like, don't tell me that Friday afternoon is the time that I can flex away from the office because guess what? Friday morning I had to take my kid to the
That's
doctors
right.
or I do school drop-offs. Like it you have to design for the
Yes.
way we really live and it's not going to be the same for every single person.
Yes.
So
Yes.
and that I think brings up a really good point because
Yeah.
I get that. As a leader, I get that you will not find one schedule that works for every single person. And if you try to do that, you're going to drive yourself crazy.
Right.
So, how do we design for flexibility that still ensures enough overlap that we can have good team dynamics and interaction?
Yeah. Well, and I think this speaks greatly to how workplaces were designed in the first place, because workplaces are designed to scale, right? So we put into place policies and structures for what most people need. And when a lot of these companies, most people were men, honestly. And so we haven't changed to address that. And a lot of times leadership hears, wait, everyone needs different things, and they see dollar signs at what that's going to cost. But the things that we're talking about here today don't actually cost a lot of money. They require us to build the systems to trust one another, to show up and do our jobs to the best of our capabilities, which is why we hire people to begin with, right? So it requires this shift really from we care about the people who work here to we are built for the people who work here.
Mhm. Mhm. I
Um,
love that. I just
yeah,
wrote down the words trust and clarity because I think those are two essential things for building a team and having the building it where everyone feels like they can show up and contribute, but you have to trust your team. You also have to have clarity around what is the expectation? What do I need from you? Right. And
yes,
so for me, it's always a conversation of this is what I need to get done today. I have to flex my time because of ABC, or not even tell you why.
mhm,
This is how I'm going to get it done, right? It
right,
doesn't, flexibility does not mean out of sight, out of mind, no accountability, no check-in, no conversation. It means there's great communication. It means there's a system of accountability, of reviewing information and making sure goals are really clear.
yeah, yes,
It requires intentional effort. And I think in some ways it's not wanting to put that intentional effort into place, right? It's easier to say everyone's in the office 9 to 5 and that's just the way it is.
yeah.
But the results are not going to be the same.
Well, and I think that goes back to where we hire for a role or a function. And yet, once someone walks into the workplace, a lot of times we're trying to fit a person, a human, into the box of the role or function. And really, at the end of the day, success is, are they hitting that role or function that we needed, that we hired them for?
Mhm.
And a lot of times we get focused on building out the how for them, but we hired for the results. So asking the women on your team, asking the people on your team, how can we help you? How can we set you up for success so that you can reach those goals? That becomes the conversation that actually builds the people infrastructure for that individual person.
Mhm, mhm. Such a great question. So now you and I are very passionate about this work. We're going to be talking over the next 5 weeks. But we also designed a resource, and it's a very quick, easy to use resource. I'm a strong believer in providing information, providing conversation, supporting this process because I think we both agree, right? This is not an overnight fix. You're not going to listen to this conversation and go have one follow up and it's all going to be better. You're going to have to invest some time and decide where do we start. So we built this resource called Design for Her, the diagnostic shift. It's 5 design shifts to go from having really good intentions to maintaining real retention. Um, Jessica, do you want to share more about, I popped a link in the chat. We'll have this linked in quite a few places. But if you don't see it, reach out to any of us as well. But Jessica, do you want to share a little more about that resource and how it helps?
Yeah, absolutely. I love this resource because it is super super useful. And so we're going to do this 5-part video series. This resource is going to cover, so it's not saying what we're saying here. It's going to cover each of the design shifts that we are covering in these videos. But what I love about it is they're seeded with questions so that you can start getting the data to understand what your organization and company's current reality is when it comes to these topics. So today we're talking pipeline, right? So how can you audit your organization and what's happening right now from an infrastructure standpoint to better understand how to design moving forward. And it's going to give us real ways to understand if we are investing in the women so that they will stay in the room with us. And so the diagnostic tool here, it's going to cover the conversations to come and today's, but it gives you real starting points to start investing in the women that you have, that you know are qualified because you brought them in, right? This is not a pipeline problem. You have people on your team that you hired because you know they can do the job. So how do we now set them up to do that job?
Mhm. The other thing that I want to point out about the diagnostic and these conversations is we both know the reality of budgets. Both time and financial resources are often limited. And so a lot of these things we're going to be talking about are not necessarily resource heavy, where you're going to have to go overhaul an entire program or add money to something. Um, my my big thing is sustainability and really looking at things that we can implement quickly or over time, but do it in a way that's sustainable. And I think that's really important to call out in terms of for anyone listening, but especially if you're a people leader, right? It doesn't have to be the mindset of big dramatic fix everything overnight, big budget, big time. It can be small design shifts that slowly start to move the needle.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't see questions in the chat, but a reminder, if you have questions, if you're watching us live, you can always pop in the chat. I see some hellos and I see we've got New York and South Carolina and Maryland here. Jessica and I are actually joining from opposite coast of the US. I'm in Boston, she's in Portland. So about as far away as possible as we
That's
can
right.
be.
That's right.
But we really built this because we're so passionate about this work and we truly believe that better design is possible to support and retain women in the way that will help the women be successful, but the end result is better company performance as well. Jessica, do you want to talk about next week's episode, what to expect for next week?
Yes. Yes.
It's actually my
Next week,
favorite.
we're talking about the invisible load. And we all carry invisible loads. I think women carry a substantial invisible load. And we're talking about decision fatigue, all those decisions we have to make during the day. We're talking about burnout, why women are getting so burned out, what we can do about it. And we're really going to break down those design patterns that cause this invisible load to get so heavy to where women leave, right? To where women are not able to show up in the ways that they are capable of, and that they so desperately want to show up and contribute. But so often this load just weighs us down. And so we're gonna talk about how do we design ourselves out of this.
So invisible load is something I love talking about anyways. I think it's something that women specifically struggle with. So I'm looking forward to next week. As a reminder to everyone, whether you're catching us live or a recording, you can catch all these episodes on the Talent Ally LinkedIn page under the events. You'll be able to go to past events. They also plan to put them on their YouTube channel, so you can go subscribe there. You can catch any of the replays. We will get that resource linked again as well. But as always, if you have questions and you'd love a one-on-one with either of us, we are always available. And I will say, it's a conversation. I love having conversations that feed back into better results. So if that sounds interesting, reach out to us. Jessica, as we close out here, I want to end with kind of the thought around what design for her actually means. So for me, design for her means that we build workplaces that allow women to show up as themselves, to create a work environment that helps them produce the best results possible and continues to fuel the future of the workplace for women. What does design for her actually mean to you?
Yeah, no, it is what you just said, only it is understanding at the human level. We have all this science and research and understanding of how humans work and how women work. and understanding that we can use this data to design workspaces that set us up to succeed. Because when we are able to show up, when individual people on your team, when the women on your team are able to show up in a way that they feel valued, in a way that they feel like they are contributing in meaningful ways and having impact, the company does better overall. We have all the data we need. We just need to start designing for these outcomes so that we can show up as the full humans we are and contribute in the best ways we can.
Great way to wrap us up there. To everyone watching, thank you so much for tuning in for this first session. We will be back next week with Invisible Load. In the meantime, if we can support you, answer any questions, please reach out, and we'll see you next week, hopefully. Take care.
Bye. Thank you, Megan.